Hello, welcome to a new edition of Design for the Times. I'm your host, Richard Christopher Scuderi. Well, as I say on many of our episodes here, we're now in season 3. I kind of consider this place like my version of the clubhouse, of Andy Cohen's clubhouse. And sometimes when you have a clubhouse or a home, you have friends that come to set. And that's what I would say about this gentleman. His name is Bruce Broadack, and he owns Flemington Fan and Lighting for the past, 30 years in the Flemington area in Ringgoes, New Jersey. Bruce, welcome back to our show.
How are you, Richard?
Good. I think
nice to be back.
I'm good, and I'm glad you're doing so well. I think we've done one show each season because we're in season 3 now. And I think that it's important to have you particularly on my set talking about lighting, because I think something happened between 2008 and now. Prior to 2008, lighting was always important, but lighting was part of a bigger picture of fabrics and furniture and accessories. But after 2008, I think there was a switch. Because the economy changed, I think people decorated differently. We went to more of the gray tones, the industrial look came in, and then what became more prominent when things became simpler was the lighting. And don't you find people are really interested in lighting now more than ever? People that weren't so interested in lighting are interested in lighting specifically to sort of be the front runner for decorating or redecorating a room.
Well, lighting became the tour de force in decorating. Lighting fixtures are now a little larger,
right?
A little more prominent in the design. And if you pick up any magazine,
right,
and you look at ads,
right,
whether they be for carpeting or for cabinetry, lighting is prominent in that particular advertising.
You're exactly right. I picked up Design New Jersey magazine, and what I noticed was they were doing an edition on kitchens, and what I saw myself looking at was what? The pendants, right?
The pendants are larger.
Right.
The lighting is more prominent in the advertisements.
Right, and it's sort of the lead for the design.
It is, yeah, exactly.
So
well stated, yes.
Why don't we take a look at your storefront, because you've been in maybe 3 different locations in the 30 years, I think. So if we could take a look, if we have that first shot, there's your business, Flemington Fan and Lighting. It is a little bit deceiving because the store is very deep. It's about 6,000 square feet of space.
It's a very large space.
And then why don't we go to the next image? And then I happen to have a little sweet corner, thanks to you, a sweet corner in your store. So we do also have some wonderful accessories and artwork. It's a great place to start, I think, at the beginning of your journey into a renovation, because you give so much information, a wealth of knowledge on decorating and where should you start. I think now these days you should start with the lighting, right? It sets a pace.
Well, when you think about lighting, you think about, ceilings as opposed to floors. You get the same space.
Exactly.
It's exactly the same space. You got many shots at the floor,
right,
as you know.
Right.
With fabric and furniture.
Right.
You got one shot at the ceiling.
Exactly. And in that area, that space, it's really the only thing of interest there, and it's very important that you get that right. Why don't we go to the next shot, because I want to talk about some of trends in design, and I want to start with this one. I took this picture when I came to the store earlier today because I wanted to talk about, this covers so many things in the way that lighting is for 2020. And the first thing that I want to talk about, which we've talked about before, is the return of gold. And how people in maybe my generation or our generation had gold and they got rid of it and they went with nickel or the silvery finishes.
They went away with the polished.
But the next generation likes gold.
Right. They use it as a highlight. They use it as an offset.
Right.
And it makes a fixture jump.
Exactly.
It's a wonderful highlight to the.
Well, why don't we talk about this piece, because you do all the buying and you're very educated and you do very good picks. Talk a little bit about this piece. So first of all, they call that an orb or a sphere.
It's either word would describe it.
Right.
It is an orb.
Okay.
There's gold accents, and that's summer gold.
Right.
It's not a shiny, polished brass.
Right.
Which people are getting away from.
Right.
But it's a nice, subtle.
It's a richer gold, isn't it?
Very rich. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's almost an applique that looks like antiquing, but it's not. A little brighter than that.
So the first thing I noticed for 2020 trends is that it's a sphere or an orb. The second thing I noticed that's on trend, of course, is that there's gold on the piece, the new summer gold or that richer gold. The third thing I notice about it, it's multi-finishes, and mixed metals and multi-finishes are very hot, aren't they?
They are.
What is the other finish on there? I can't sort of tell from the shot.
There's a little antique brass.
Okay.
There's a little bit of summer gold.
Right.
And the outside of the fixture is oil rub bronze.
Oh, oil rub bronze with the gold, which is kind of
and that's
nice.
Variated. There's
Right.
there's highlights
Right.
included in that fixture.
The next thing that I think is also trending, and I think you talked about this last time, is that we're seeing the new pieces without any glass.
Yes.
Do you think that's going to continue to trend?
I do, and it's in multiple fixtures. It's
Right.
not just orbs.
No.
It's in horizontal pieces. It's in
Right.
vertical pieces.
Sure, lanterns, everything.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's a maintenance thing also. And
Why do you think that the new look has no glass? And is there a practical application, or is it just style? Why do you think that
I think it's style, and I also think it's a maintenance
Issue?
maintenance issue. Yeah, you don't have to worry about cleaning glass.
Right.
And it's also an openness. Even with glass, there's still an enclosure, and you get reflection, and it kind of reduces the look of the piece with
Right.
glass.
Right.
Even though you could see through it, it still, I think, reduces the impact of the piece.
I think that's probably right. I think glass would almost be distracting in that way because of the reflective quality. You really
Right.
get to see the piece, and there's an airiness about this piece. Now, in your estimation, in that particular piece, do you see that more as maybe a foyer entry piece or a dining room piece? What do you see it as?
Both areas.
Right.
I've seen it in family rooms. I've seen it in gathering rooms. I've seen it as a focal point of a living room, a parlor.
Sure.
It's used in a multitude of environments.
I like what you just said about using it in living rooms. Let's go to the next shot. I recently, clients of ours, I love this piece. We'll talk about this in a second. I hung a chandelier. They had a cathedral ceiling in their living room. Don't forget, not the only place for a chandelier is the dining room and the foyer. If you have a big space, hang a chandelier in your living room. It becomes a crescendo, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We also hang pieces like that in
Right.
corners,
Yes.
which brings out a different impact to the room and to the piece. And it's used many times in corners and in other parts of the room other than the centers of the rooms.
Let's talk about this piece. Now, I don't know who this one is, but I absolutely love it. I think it would create so much drama and impact and sort of set the pace for being something that's modern but also warm at the same time.
It's extraordinarily warm. Now that's recycled glass.
Is that what that is?
That's what that is. It's
Okay.
recycled glass. That whole fixture is made from recycled materials.
Right.
And it's extraordinarily green. That's one of the features of that company. Everything that they manufacture, that they make,
Right.
is recycled.
There's almost a crystal look to this, and you and I talked before we went on the air today about sort of the return of crystals, how people are embracing them again, because they're not just done in that old-fashioned way. They're done in
Right.
many different new vehicles, and they add an element of drama that I don't think anything else will.
I agree.
This sort of has almost like a pave diamond kind of a look to it, and it's very reflective. Again, there's also an openness to this piece, right, Bruce? Because again, there is no glass, so there's sort of like a mesh or a netting underneath. So
Actually, it's a metal frame.
it's a metal frame.
It's
okay.
a metal frame that encompasses the glass. In other words,
Right.
the glass, and there's separation, which does give you a little bit of openness to the piece.
Beautiful.
Very, very, very different, unique piece.
Yes, and let's go to the next image. Okay, so this is a piece that I'm actually, I had the client come in yesterday when you weren't there. I'm doing a family room over. It's sort of a big dining table, but it's casual space. Talk about this piece because I see these pieces being so popular. Is it physically actually wood, or is it metal that looks like wood mixed with metal?
Both things are true. Not in
Okay.
this particular piece, but
Okay.
but we have companies that do a painted metal
Okay,
that looks just like wood.
right,
This particular piece from Hinckley
right.
is wood and a rustic metal.
Beautiful combination.
It is a very, very beautiful, very different piece.
Right.
And you get the shading of old wood with that piece. So there's a nostalgic look to that piece,
Right.
in addition to today's look that it's open
Right.
and
I think this
quite
is
beautiful piece.
I think this is a perfect example of somebody that has maybe a traditional family room or a traditional house, and they want to go from traditional to transitional because this still has elements of it that are traditional, but yet because it being so open and airy, multiple finishes, and the weathered wood, it makes it kind of very much up to date.
I agree.
And I think this could work with a lot of different furniture, mission style furniture, contemporary furniture, transitional furniture. It could work in a lot of environments. Let's take a look at the next picture. Okay, so I wanted to bring this picture up for a reason, because I think that people forget that you carry unique lamps. Now, you can get a lamp pretty much everywhere, but you're seeing the same lamps over and over. You have a very wide display of unusual lamps that you don't see anywhere else. Now, in this particular case, I love colored glass because it has amazing impact. And these days, when the walls are all shades of pale gray or grayish, it's the pops, the opportunities in a room to bring in some color. Now, of course, in this case, that does. Are you seeing colored glass? When you go to buy things, look at the pop that gives. If your sofa,
lot of colored glass.
If your sofa was neutral, if your walls were neutral, this really sets the pace for all the accents, don't you think? The pillows.
I do. And if you look behind it, the wall art,
right?
That's a hand blown. That's a hand-blown piece.
Right.
They come in various colors,
Sure.
and that adds a nice dimension to your walls. I mean, and you could configure those in any fashion that you want, and it just makes the walls pop.
And colored glass is terrific because not only does it bring you sort of saturated color, but it's also reflective.
Right.
So it becomes kind of important in the space. Let's take a look at the next image. Oh, that's me. Do we have another image there? I can always look at that.
That is you, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
See if we get the next image. But Bruce, you go down to shows. You must be bombarded by all the different sales reps trying to get you to buy their wares. How do you know what to pick? Because I haven't seen in the number of years that we've been together in that space, I don't see anything that you've taken in that's sort of a loser. I see things that are a good display, and you have enough mix of things that are traditional, things that are transitional, and some of the modern pieces done in a different way. How do you know what to pick?
You know what? We talk to designers like yourself.
Right.
We get feels for the industry. We look at furniture. We look at carpeting, at rugs. We look at design trends.
Right.
Based upon the design trends, we go down to lighting marts and we choose. And we're very selective in what we bring into the store.
Right.
Yes, you mentioned that the store is extraordinarily eclectic, which it is.
Right.
And it gives people, they don't have to compromise. Every one of our styles is the beginning.
Right.
When you go to most stores, what they want you to buy is what they're showing you.
Correct.
So you're very, very, very
Limited.
pigeonholed into what's available. And it's what people don't know that we bring to the surface, that you bring to the surface. Everything that people don't know about something, you kind of enforce and bring to their eyes. And that's what we do in the store.
Sure.
You could pick different sizes with a certain look.
Right.
You might love a piece, but it's too vast for your particular environment. Well, it comes smaller.
Right. And there's something also that people don't get when they order things online. And we'll talk about ordering online because it's so much part of retail today. You can never get visual weight as its own component, because something could be a certain weight or a certain size, but visual weight is something that you have to see.
Right.
And I say, well, you cannot duplicate color on a computer screen, for sure, right?
Yes.
How many people go to a place, there's no differentiation of quality online.
None.
They spend money, they wait to get us something, they open it up, they put it up, they get an electrician involved, they hate what they got, they have to take it down, they have to put it back and start all over again. I think just like I would need to buy a sofa because frames aren't standard, I need to go there and sit in it, right? It's like trying on a suit.
Right.
So much is true for lighting because you cannot discern quality, weight, or visual weight on a computer screen.
That's correct.
How many people come into your store and say they bought online and returned? I hear it a lot.
Yeah, an awful lot. Again, you can't tell. You can't tell about the material. You can't
Right.
tell finishes. You can't tell sizes.
How about
believe it or not.
origin?
There's no
Origin of where
perception.
things come from, right? Online. It's all skewed. So you really could be getting junk and not realize it because it's a cheap imitation of a quality piece.
Exactly.
But having a physical store in an era where Macy's is closing stores, Lord and Taylor, all these people that are closing stores, yet your store is thriving. I think that's physically feeding the fact that, number one, lighting is very important. Number two, you're giving people an education, which is rare because you've been there so long and you have the experience and your team has the experience. But number three, you just have to do lighting. It's just like paint. You have to do lighting in person. You have to see it. There's so much elements to what lighting does.
Right. There's an emotional and there's a physical essence to seeing something and feeling something and seeing something in an environment that you'll never get looking at a picture.
You cannot determine the warmth of light that something gets off on the computer.
No.
If you see things, you have everything lit in the store, the ability to have it lit, then you get that feel of what things are, what has a patina. The nuances sometimes of a lighting fixture can't even be discerned through the computer screen. Although, having said that, let's talk about your website, and also maybe a good place to start. So your website is?
Well, it's flemingtonlighting.com.
Right. And you're able to go, before you maybe even come into the store, if you're coming from a distance. I notice there's very few lighting stores left.
Correct.
So I see people coming from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, from Princeton. We know some of the different customers. They're not coming from the local. They are coming from the local, but it's becoming a destination.
Well, we have a very, very widespread audience.
Right.
We've done work all over the country. We've done work in Colorado, in California, in Florida. People buy homes in different parts of the country.
But they come to you for the
lighting. We decorate.
lighting.
They come for us for lighting, and we ship all over the world.
Right.
And it's very special to work with somebody on a personalized basis, which you'll never get online.
No,
never. You'll never get the expertise of a lighting designer, or a designer, in your case, that just enhances any buy that you subsequently make.
Exactly, and even your staff, even Terry, your manager at the store, she's been doing it for such a long time. You also know what really works in people's house, because often they bring you back pictures of how it looks.
Absolutely.
So you see what works visually, what's the better quality stuff, and that's one of the things you won't get from Click. But I do think it's often a good place. When people come in, I see you consistently say, do the walk around, get an idea of your style, but then you have a library of books for people to look at.
We have many brands. Most lighting companies that are dominant in the field, we carry. I would say just about every major manufacturer we carry. We have exclusive lines. We have lines that are everywhere. We inform the customers of what not to buy also. And that's a major tour de force that we bring to the table. So many things look alike, but there's major difference quality-wise in the particular fixture.
Exactly.
And it's the human touch and it's the professional touch that is so rare these days in your business and mine. I mean, it's something that people are not getting, and once they're aware of it, it makes all the difference in the world.
Let's talk about, we talked a little bit about pendants, but I want to go into the detail of how pendants, I believe, have changed. Pendants have been around for a very long time. Back in the day in my career, people had pendants. I don't even call them pendants. They weren't the term they are now. I would say 85% of the people that walk in the store when I'm there on Wednesdays and Saturdays are coming for pendants, because it's the beginning of the redecorate for them.
Correct.
The original pendants that I saw were often small in scale.
Very small, yep.
Maybe done on a bar, right?
Maybe.
Cantilever, different heights.
Some.
All sorts of, but a very different look.
Yeah.
Often with more color. The new pendants, I guess because styles have changed and it's gotten more, I think style has gotten simpler and more contemporary and more dramatic. I often see two, right? Two to me is
or
a beautiful,
more.
Or three, but not as many, but a much bigger piece.
Right, much more prominent
and it sets
the kitchen space.
Right, and it sets sort of the pace of how the the rest of the kitchen is going to look.
Correct.
Do many people, when they're doing their kitchen over, do they start with the pendants? Because I've seen that.
A lot of people do start with the pendants. We ask people to bring in photographs of their environment, of their kitchen. Let us see what type of cabinets. Let us see the dimensions of your counter. And often that in itself will bring another dimension to what's available in that particular space that would look the best.
Let's talk about when you have typically in a kitchen, you probably have an island these days of some sort with some pendants, 2 or 3. I would say typically 2 pendants. And then, of course, in that same space hanging, we have a chandelier. Any sort of things that you sort of recommend as continuity so that the pendants, if they don't necessarily have a matching, and I don't always like matching actually, they don't have a piece that relates to it, bringing those elements together.
An interesting point here, Rich, is that every fixture that we have in the store, and there's thousands, every piece has a pendant or smaller version of what we're looking at.
An equivalent.
And anything can go. So there's virtually no compromise as far as complementary pieces. I prefer that look as opposed to the same piece just in a different size over the table versus over an island. You can, but it's such a much better look to have a little bit of difference between the 2 pieces. It just brings more impact to the total environment.
Because eclectic is in right now. That's very true. And people are taking their existing dining room sets and they're painting the sideboard a color. And they're replacing the end chairs with fabric end chairs, just so there's an eclectic look. So much is true for that. But I want to, while we're on the kitchen, which seems to be so crucial, people are making over their kitchens, I want to talk about under-counter lighting, because I think maybe last year I did 5 kitchens, and the lighting that we've done for the kitchens I thought was so well received, not only by the customers, but by my electricians. The installers really liked what we were doing. Now, I remember a house I built in the 90s, I had puck lighting underneath. There's under the cabinet, there's a rail to hide it. And these things were hot.
Yes.
Yeah, and you couldn't go near them, or if you went like this, you'd hit it. And then we sort of went to a period of time where then we went to the rope lighting, I believe. Is that correct?
Rope lighting, correct.
Right.
Yes.
But now you have a new and improved version of the puck, which is very thin. Tell us about that.
Well, the puck that we just put in your latest edition, or your latest kitchen, was an LED puck by WAC.
Great.
The lighting that was derived from it, it's called CRI, and that's a very important point and something that people should be aware of. CRI is color rendering index. It's how objects are perceived by the human eye as opposed to distortions of colors. The closer to 100 that the CRI shows, the more natural the light, and the more color exactness you're going to get from that particular light source. So the pucks that we used had a CRI of like 98, which is amazingly close to 100. And it also gave a beam of light. So rather than have a series of points, which
like
LEDs are, they're bullets. You get a cone that spreads over the entire surface that you're trying to light. You get much better light, and you also get very consistent light.
And so that is the first thing I noticed when we lit the last kitchen, or the last 2 kitchens I did with you, is that the distribution light was exactly that. It was like a cone, and it consistently covered the surface,
there were no,
which you really want, because that's where you're doing something. It's a task light. I mean, it can also be an accent light, but it's a task light, so that was very good.
Yeah, there was no absence of light.
The second thing I noticed is you touch it, it's cool as a cucumber, and a lot less expensive to run.
And you'll never replace a bulb. So
we only have about 3 minutes left, and there's so much that I want to cover. I want to talk about LED lighting in general, but I want to talk about people upgrading their cans or recessed lights to the new style of light, which not everybody knows about, that cans are more popular than ever, or recessed lights. We call them different things. Canada, they think they say pot lights. But they're all basically the same thing. The original can, which I have some of them still in my house, were kind of this sort of open hole that had a baffle around it. And the first baffles were awful because they were metal, right? And they reflected everything. And the light that went in, it was like a car light, and it wasn't very attractive.
Right.
They evolved a little bit. The baffles then became metal, but they were either white or black.
Right.
But now it seems that there's a new generation of recessed lights. So let's talk a little bit about the LED ones, what they're like.
Well, you're talking about the trim. That's the outward part. That's what you see with your eyes.
Right.
That's the decorative aspect of recessed lighting. The bulbs that you talk about, there are various forms of the bulb.
Right.
There's par.
Right.
There's floods. There's spots, and these are all types of bulbs that would go into a recessed light,
right?
Into a socket that's inside of a recessed light. So there's many choices. There's also what are called complete fixtures that are included,
which is lovely, right?
Which go into the socket, and it's the bulb and it's the trim,
right? So
all
it's
in
actually
one.
right. So it's actually you're buying the bulb, and it's the whole unit.
It's the trim and the bulb, yeah.
And it's a good way to take an old recessed light and then convert it.
Right.
Because what happens then is it's not all open. Bugs can't get into it. It's sealed.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
a lot less expensive to run, right?
A lot less, oh my God, it's 90% less to run, and the lifespans are 22 to 25 years.
And that's very important, not just for the cans I'm talking about, but for all the fixtures you have in your store with the LED bulbs in them, because often we have cathedral ceilings, we have two-story spaces.
Right.
I've seen you sell them, we've done it together many times where we have a two-story foyer and we're putting a beautiful piece 30 feet into the air. You don't want to have to change those bulbs.
Never. That's right.
There was a short window where people were having that mechanism that lowered it, but I don't see that too much anymore. With the LED, you don't necessarily need it.
No.
Put it up with the LED bulbs.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's exactly correct.
With a little bit less than a minute yet, I want to focus on your store, and why don't we start with its Flemington Fan and Lighting, and the address?
The address is 176 Route 20231 in Ringgoes, New Jersey.
Right.
Our website is flemingtonlighting.com.
Right.
We carry every major brand of light and fan and accessories, and we're experts in the field, and we love helping people find exactly what they're looking for and save them money.
And I do believe, you've had lighting stores all over the world, even in Europe, and your staff are very knowledgeable. So what I do see people is they stick around a long time. Yeah. They don't do a walk in through and leave. There's sort of a learning curve, and there's education that you get.
A lot of it, yes.
So thank you for being my guest.
My pleasure,
Have a
as
wonderful
always.
day.
And you, thank you. Nice being here.